Under the moonlit trees of Versailles, Cardinal de Rohan bowed before a woman in white and received a rose from her hand. He believed she was Marie Antoinette. She was not. The meeting lasted only minutes, yet it helped unlock one of the most expensive necklaces in Europe and destroy the reputation of a queen who never owned it. Forged letters, a false signature, vanished diamonds, and a public trial transformed an audacious fraud into something far more dangerous. Was Marie merely the victim of one swindler? Or did powerful enemies recognize the perfect weapon and help the lie become history? The fraud did not begin with diamonds. It began with a man powerful enough to buy them and desperate enough to believe a stranger. Jeanne de la Motte carried a name that sounded more valuable than her circumstances. Through a distant branch, she could claim descent from the old royal house of Valois. That ancestry gave her an aura, but not the fortune or honored position that noble descent seemed to promise. At Versailles, where rank opened doors before character was examined, her lineage could function like credit. The name was real enough to attract attention. Everything attached to it could be adjusted for the listener. Cardinal de Rohan occupied the opposite end of the social order. He possessed office, family prestige, wealth, and access. Yet one absence weakened all of those advantages. Marie Antoinette did not favor him. His conduct during an earlier diplomatic posting in Vienna had helped estrange him from the Queen and her family. Restoring her goodwill promised more than personal satisfaction. Favor at Versailles meant influence, proximity, and the repair of a public wound. Jeanne did not have to prove that she controlled the Queen. She only had to suggest a private route toward forgiveness. That promise was difficult to test because secrecy made every missing confirmation appear reasonable. If Marie wished to reconcile discreetly, official channels would supposedly be useless. If messages arrived indirectly, concealment explained the method. Each weakness in the story could be presented as evidence that the relationship was sensitive. Rohan therefore entered the scheme in two roles at once. He was the target of deliberate deception. He was also a willing interpreter of whatever supported his hope. His rank did not protect him from that conflict. It may have made the conflict stronger because powerful men often expect hidden doors to open for them. Jeanne's rarest asset was not Valois blood. It was her ability to identify the private hunger inside a public man. Rohan wanted absolution from the one person who withheld it. Jeanne offered herself as the bridge. Once he accepted her access, he also accepted her explanations, her delays, and her control over evidence. Around Rohan, there were already whispers of mysticism and secret knowledge. His association with the celebrated adventurer Cagliostro later encouraged suspicions about hidden societies and deeper designs. Such connections made the affair feel larger after it became public. They do not establish that an occult circle directed the fraud or that Cagliostro understood Jeanne's plan. Atmosphere is not evidence. The important mechanism was simpler. Jeanne understood that confidence fraud succeeds when a victim protects the promise from scrutiny. Every question Rohan failed to ask preserved his imagined reconciliation. Every favor he extended made retreat more humiliating. The more he invested, the more convincing the secret needed to become. The promise also reversed the normal hierarchy. Rohan possessed rank, while Jeanne possessed only alleged intimacy. Yet he could not approach Marie through the channels his position provided. That made Jeanne socially weaker, strategically indispensable. Each confidential message increased her authority over him. By accepting secrecy as proof of favor, the cardinal allowed a woman without stable power to control the one ambition his power could not satisfy. Jeanne had found the buyer. Now she needed to manufacture the only person whose forgiveness he wanted. For a few minutes, Versailles did not need a real queen. It needed a silhouette, a rose, and a man willing to complete the illusion himself. The woman selected for that role was Nicole d'Oliva. Historical records identify her as a young woman whose appearance could suggest Marie Antoinette under carefully limited conditions. Her circumstances also made her available for a paid performance arranged by others. She did not need to resemble the queen under bright inspection. She needed only to fit a familiar outline at a distance. Jeanne arranged the meeting in the Queen's Grove at Versailles on the 11th of August, 1784. The setting supplied what the disguise could not. Darkness softened details. A white dress suggested the figure Rohan expected. Courtly ritual instructed him how to approach before ordinary recognition could begin. Nicole appeared briefly and offered words that conveyed forgiveness. A rose passed from the supposed queen to the cardinal. No extended conversation was required. There was no time for Rohan to examine a face, test a memory, or question an unfamiliar voice. The performance ended before doubt could become an action. The encounter worked because it confirmed an idea already established through Jeanne. Rohan had been told that Marie wished to repair their relationship privately. The woman in the grove did not create that belief. She gave it a body. A dim figure became proof because the cardinal supplied the identity himself. The rose carried the emotional force of royal favor. In another setting, it would have been an ordinary flower. Inside the grove, after promises of secret reconciliation, it became a credential. Rohan accepted it as a sign from Marie. In the machinery of the fraud, however, it was a prop designed to make uncertainty feel intimate. Nicole's usefulness depended upon limits. The meeting had to be short, the light weak, and the emotional message simple. Every additional second created another opportunity for recognition to fail. Jeanne therefore designed an encounter where ceremony replaced examination. Rohan saw what rank taught him to see: white clothing, guarded access, a gracious token, and the promise of restored royal favor. Nicole later stood before the law as the woman who had played the queen. Her participation is established. The limits of her understanding are harder to measure. She presented herself as someone hired for a performance without full knowledge of the larger fraud. That account makes her an actor in the literal sense, though it cannot answer every question about what she suspected. Was she recruited for a financial deception? Or had she entered a political operation beyond her view? The first possibility rests on the known structure of Jeanne's fraud. Independent evidence has not established that Nicole served a coordinated campaign against Marie Antoinette. Her brief role, nevertheless, created an image with extraordinary political power. A stranger could wear the queen's identity, and a prince of the church would kneel. Moonlight could hide a face. The next deception had to survive in daylight, on paper. The woman in the garden vanished before dawn. Her handwriting did not. The correspondence presented to Rohan seemed to extend the private reconciliation. Letters attributed to Marie created the impression of a continuing, hidden relationship. They allowed Jeanne to control both sides of an exchange without producing the queen herself again. Paper could travel where Nicole could not, answer at convenient moments, and turn an isolated meeting into an apparent bond. A deception offered something the garden could not: continuity. A letter could be reread and treated as evidence after the moment passed. It could make each new request appear to emerge from an established confidence. Jeanne converted a fleeting scene into a relationship whose history existed only inside documents her operation supplied. The letters were false. They were prepared and moved through people working around Jeanne, creating a small operational network. Someone composed or copied the messages. Someone delivered them. Nicole supplied physical confirmation. Jeanne managed Rohan's expectations and interpreted every silence. More than one participant was required, but several participants in a fraud do not prove a political headquarters behind them. One feature of the correspondence should have stopped the scheme. The signature used the form Marie Antoinette de France. Royal practice did not ordinarily require the queen to sign in that manner. A courtier as experienced as Rohan could have recognized the irregularity. The mistake was not concealed in a difficult cipher. It appeared at the bottom of the supposed proof. Calling Rohan foolish, however, explains too little. Intelligence does not operate separately from desire. Rohan had reasons to interpret secrecy as privilege and irregularity as protection. A strange signature could be excused as a private form. An indirect messenger could seem necessary. Any verification through normal court channels risked exposing the correspondence and, more painfully, discovering that the reconciliation did not exist. The obvious flaw, therefore, reveals something important about confidence. Rohan did not merely fail to inspect the evidence. Inspection threatened the future he had begun to imagine. Each forged letter rewarded belief and raised the emotional cost of doubt. The fraud survived because its victim became an unwitting guardian of its weakest point. The machinery also demonstrates why later conspiracy theories feel persuasive. The operation contained several people, staged access to a royal garden, a disguised woman, carried messages, and a forged identity. Those are real elements of coordination. They support the conclusion that Jeanne did not perform every task alone. They do not show that ministers, foreign agents, or organized enemies of the Queen designed the operation. Then the letters moved beyond forgiveness. They created the authority for a financial act whose scale should have demanded verification. Böhmer and Bassange, jewelers to the crown, were trapped with an object that few buyers could afford. Their enormous diamond necklace had been offered to the royal family. Marie Antoinette had already refused it. That refusal should have protected her. Instead, it made the fraud more audacious. Jeanne's false correspondence supplied an explanation. Perhaps the Queen wanted the necklace secretly, through an intermediary, beyond the ordinary view of court. The very extravagance of that story made secrecy seem plausible to someone who already believed himself restored. The forged letters opened a private door. Behind it waited a necklace even the real Queen had refused to buy. Marie never wore the necklace, yet every hand that touched it brought the scandal closer to her name. Böhmer and Bassange had spent years seeking a buyer for an extraordinary burden. Versailles records nearly 650 diamonds weighing almost 2,800 carats. The reduced price was 1.6 million livres, leaving immense value trapped inside one unsold object. The jeweler's financial pressure mattered because the fraud needed sellers willing to trust royal authority and accept secrecy around a powerful, hidden buyer. In 1782, the necklace was presented to Louis XVI, and Marie refused it. Whatever criticisms surrounded her expenses, she did not commission, accept, or wear this jewel. Public memory would nevertheless make it an emblem of her appetite. Jeanne recognized that the jewelers needed a royal buyer. Rohan believed he possessed secret authority from the queen. Those two needs fitted together. The forged correspondence allowed him to act as intermediary while preserving the fiction that Marie wished to avoid an open purchase. Secrecy, once more, converted missing evidence into apparent sophistication. On the 1st of February, 1785, Böhmer and Bassange delivered the necklace to Rohan. He received it on the supposed queen's behalf and passed it onward. Jeanne and her accomplices gained control of the diamonds. Marie remained outside the transaction, unaware that her name had become its guarantee. The necklace then lost the feature that made it recognizable. It was broken apart. Stones passed through hands and may have been sold beyond France. The complete object disappeared into separate diamonds, each easier to move and harder to identify. A spectacular royal jewel became anonymous merchandise. That transformation changed the balance of evidence. While the necklace remained whole, it could connect possession to a person. Once dismantled, the central object of the crime no longer had a single shape. The real evidence scattered. The fictional queen became more visible. The strongest supported explanation for Jeanne's conduct is financial fraud. She had acquired a commodity of immense value by exploiting Rohan's hope and the jeweler's pressure. Her network needed people who could receive, divide, carry, and sell stones. Profit supplied a direct motive, a workable method, and a visible result. Yet this particular object invites a harder question. Did Jeanne choose it for political force, or because it was the richest available prize? She may have known that stories about Marie's spending made secrecy believable. That remains an inference about strategy, not proof of a broader political plan. The number of accomplices can mislead us. Removing and selling hundreds of diamonds required assistance. That establishes a criminal network. It does not automatically establish a network created to weaken the monarchy. Shared profit can coordinate people without shared ideology. Meanwhile, the jewelers expected payment according to the agreement arranged through Rohan. Paper survived where the necklace did not. Installments, messages, and the queen's supposed approval continued to carry her identity. The physical jewel had dissolved, but the debt remained complete. On the 12th of July, Böhmer wrote to Marie about the necklace. Knowing of no purchase, she could not understand the message. Later, demands for payment exposed the transaction. Her response reflected alarm at discovering an enormous obligation created in her name. The court now faced a choice. It could attempt to contain the deception or demonstrate publicly that a prince of the church had used false authority. Louis XVI chose confrontation. The decision would bring Rohan, the forged letters, and the queen's reputation before the watching court. The diamonds could be broken apart and sold. The debt still carried the queen's name. The first person to place Marie Antoinette at the center of the scandal was not Jeanne. It was the palace trying to clear her name. When the jewelers sought payment, Marie learned that Rohan had negotiated a vast purchase on her supposed instructions. The transaction presented an insult as well as a financial threat. It suggested that she had secretly used a cardinal she openly distrusted, accepted a necklace she had previously rejected, and then failed to honor the debt. Louis XVI could have treated the matter as a contained inquiry. Instead, Rohan was summoned at Versailles on the 15th of August, 1785. He was preparing to take part in a ceremony when the king demanded an explanation. After that confrontation, he was arrested publicly within the palace. The crown appears to have expected decisive action to separate Marie from the fraud. A visible arrest could show that royal authority rejected Rohan's claim and defended the queen's honor. Yet political theater does not belong entirely to the people who stage it. Once seen, it can acquire a different meaning. Courtiers witnessed a cardinal being taken away. Beyond Versailles, the public initially lacked the documents needed to understand the case. The spectacle arrived before the evidence. It suggested that something involving the queen, a great nobleman, and an immense debt, had visibly pushed the palace beyond its ordinary discretion. The arrest therefore helped transform a private confidence scheme into a national scandal. That consequence is an inference from the event's publicity, not proof that the court wished to damage Marie. Its purpose and its effect diverged. The crown tried to command the story through force. Force told everyone that the story mattered. Several interests then moved toward the same opening. Jeanne gained a stage on which she could recast herself and challenge the people accusing her. Court opponents could use the affair against royal favorites and against the queen's circle. Pamphlet writers found a ready-made plot featuring diamonds, secret meetings, forged intimacy, and a foreign-born queen already burdened by hostile stereotypes. There is no demonstrated chain showing that these groups coordinated the original fraud. They did not need to. Jeanne wanted survival. Political critics wanted ammunition. Sellers of scandal wanted attention. Their interests overlapped after the arrest, making independent exploitation resemble a single design. This distinction matters because a conspiracy can be imagined backward. When many people benefit from one disaster, later observers may assume that they jointly created it. The record supports a fraud, organized by Jeanne and accomplices. It also supports the conclusion that other forces amplified the resulting scandal. The bridge between those facts remains unproven. The decision to proceed publicly widened the question before France. The legal case concerned false letters, stolen diamonds, unpaid jewelers, and Rohan's responsibility. Public opinion considered something more emotional. Whether Marie seemed like the kind of queen who would arrange such a purchase. That second question was dangerous because it could not be answered by one document. It drew upon years of suspicion, political resentment, foreign prejudice, and sexualized rumor. Evidence might show that the signature was false. It could not easily erase the imaginary Marie already circulating beyond the palace. The king had demanded a trial to separate his wife from the fraud. The courtroom would make them inseparable. Marie Antoinette was never placed in the dock. Her reputation was. The proceedings before the Parlement de Paris brought the surviving elements of the fraud into public view. This body was a high court under the old regime, not a modern elected parliament. Its judges would decide criminal responsibility. The larger audience would decide what the case meant. Rohan presented himself as the victim of calculated deception. The forged correspondence supported his claim that someone had constructed a false channel to the Queen. Nicole d'Oliva confirmed her part in the nocturnal performance. Jeanne resisted the role assigned to her, shifting accounts and redirecting suspicion. Cagliostro, whose reputation invited sensational speculation, was pulled into the case without a secure evidentiary chain proving that he designed the necklace scheme. The evidence, however, pointed toward a practical fraud. A woman had impersonated Marie in the Grove. Letters bearing the Queen's identity were not authentic. The signature violated recognizable royal convention. The necklace had passed through Rohan to Jeanne's side of the operation and then disappeared into separated stones. By ordinary logic, every exposed falsehood moved Marie farther from guilt. She had rejected the necklace years earlier. She had not attended the garden meeting, written the letters, received the jewel, or controlled its sale. She was not accused in the courtroom because the direct case did not place her inside the transaction. Yet an invisible case proceeded beside the legal one. Marie's foreign birth had long made her vulnerable to charges of divided loyalty. Hostile commentary had associated her with excessive spending and political influence. Sexual libels supplied imagined private behavior whenever facts were missing. Those accusations were not evidence in the necklace fraud, but they shaped how listeners evaluated its plausibility. The court asked whether Rohan knowingly misused the Queen's name or had been deceived. The public could ask whether Marie was secretive, extravagant, or vindictive enough to make his story believable. Those questions used different standards. One required proof of acts. The other required only an existing character that the audience recognized. Pamphlets and circulating commentary did not need to establish that Marie possessed a single diamond. They could portray Versailles as a place where hidden indulgence seemed normal, and official denials seemed self-serving. The necklace became useful as a symbol precisely because it was too magnificent for most people to imagine as an ordinary commercial object. Rohan's own errors complicated the Queen's position. He had accepted a strange signature and a shadowed encounter. His willingness to believe could be read as evidence that secret transactions were conceivable at court. The better he appeared as a deceived man, the more the supposed royal deception seemed culturally possible. This was the false promise of the trial. Fraud could be demonstrated. Marie's absence from the transaction could be established. The imposture could be exposed so completely that the Queen should have emerged free of its stain. Courtroom evidence appeared capable of restoring the boundary between a real woman and a manufactured one. But legal truth enters public life through institutions people either trust or distrust. The Crown had ordered Rohan's public arrest. The judges belonged to a body with its own relationship to royal authority. The Cardinal came from a family whose standing commanded sympathy. Every ruling would therefore be read as more than a finding about documents. As judgment approached, the case became a test of credibility. If Rohan was condemned, supporters could say the forged letters had failed, while critics could claim royal pride was being protected. If he was acquitted, the legal meaning would remain limited, but the public symbolism would be enormous throughout France and beyond court. The forged signature had been exposed, Nicole's performance identified, and the necklace traced as never reaching Marie. On the central facts, the false queen seemed ready to collapse. The evidence could expose the fraud. The verdict would reveal whether France still wanted to believe it. The court was about to decide Rohan's fate. Outside, France was waiting to decide Marie's. In May of 1786, the Parlement de Paris delivered its decision. Cardinal de Rohan was acquitted. The verdict released him from criminal responsibility in the affair. It did not declare that Marie had ordered the necklace, written the letters, or received the diamonds. Yet legal precision could not control the meaning carried into the streets. The acquittal was greeted as a victory for Rohan. Public approval transformed a judgment about the cardinal into a rebuke of the crown that had arrested him. The proceedings were expected to expose the fraud and publicly vindicate her name. Instead, the man who had believed an impostor emerged to celebration, while the genuine queen appeared humiliated. Jeanne and others connected to the fraud were judged separately according to their roles. Her punishment confirmed that crimes had occurred. That fact should have strengthened Marie's innocence. Politically, however, it competed with a more satisfying drama. A proud foreign queen had tried to destroy a great churchman, and independent judges had resisted her. That narrative did not require Marie to own the necklace. It required audiences to distrust her. The acquittal offered a public event onto which older suspicions could attach themselves. Anti-Austrian feeling made her loyalty suspect. Stories about royal luxury made the price plausible. Sexualized pamphlets had already trained readers to imagine secrecy around her private life. Anger at the court supplied the final pressure. Rohan's credulity also changed meaning. Before the verdict, it exposed Jeanne's skill. Afterward, sympathy converted it into innocence. If a cardinal believed the messages, critics could argue that the deception reflected a secretive court. The palace's public strategy now completed its reversal. The arrest had announced a royal crisis before the facts were understood. The trial had repeated Marie's name beside every detail. The verdict allowed opponents to celebrate against her without proving that she touched the necklace. An effort to restore honor had made her reputation dependent upon a judgment concerning someone else. The strongest political interpretation, therefore, does not require an unseen director. A fraud can be conceived for money and later weaponized by people who never planned it. Shared hostility can produce coordinated-looking results without coordination. The absence of a central director does not make the political damage accidental. It means the damage was created by accumulation. One narrower question remains. Jeanne chose Marie's identity because it opened money and authority, and she may have understood its political danger. Court rivals, printers, and royal critics had motives to welcome the damage. Those motives explain amplification, but surviving evidence does not prove that any faction ordered Jeanne to begin the original scheme. Then there was the necklace itself. Marie had refused it. She never wore or received it. By the trial, the great arrangement no longer existed as one object. Its stones had lost their setting and moved beyond the form that gave them meaning. Yet the absent necklace became permanently attached to her. Pamphlets did not need to recover one diamond. The public could place it around an imagined queen and call the image truth. A jewel can be examined, owned, or refused. A reputation exists in other minds. Marie could reject the necklace, but she could not command how France pictured her wearing it. What she never possessed became the possession history would not let her surrender. Legally, the trial separated the queen from the fraud. Politically, it joined them more tightly. Marie won the factual question and lost the story. Her innocence became less memorable than the spectacle designed to establish it. The verdict that cleared a man condemned a queen's reputation. It showed that public belief does not always follow evidence. Sometimes evidence arrives after the desired character has already been chosen. The trial ended the fraud as a transaction. It began the fraud's longer life as history. Jeanne stole the diamonds once. France would reuse the theft for years. The necklace affair entered a political culture already skilled at turning Marie into a symbol. Hostile images presented the foreign queen as an Austrian influence inside France. Attacks on court expenditure reduced complex financial failures to the appetite of one visible woman. Sexual libels imagined hidden access, private corruption, and uncontrolled desire. The scandal did not create those prejudices from nothing. It gave them an object. Diamonds made extravagance visible. Forged letters made secrecy tangible. The Grove offered a setting for fantasy. Rohan's arrest supplied a scene of royal power, and his acquittal supplied a scene of royal defeat. One recurring image required no proof. Marie as a woman whose wants could consume public wealth behind closed doors. Another showed the monarchy as a glittering structure rotten beneath its surface. The necklace could serve both pictures, even though the queen had refused it. Political propaganda valued symbolic fit more than ownership records. The direct thief and the later amplifiers must remain distinct. Jeanne's operation took possession of the diamonds through false authority. Pamphleteers, court enemies, and broader critics took possession of the narrative. They could edit its emphasis, ignore the queen's refusal, and make Rohan's acquittal sound like a judgment against Marie. That process supports a measured political conclusion. There is evidence for the fraud and its accomplices. There is evidence that publicity damaged Marie and that hostile commentary exploited the affair. There is no complete evidentiary chain leading to a secret room where one group designed every stage, controlled every actor, and aimed from the beginning at her destruction. Still, the absence of such a room does not make the result less political. A society can collaborate without meeting. Many people may recognize the same useful lie and repeat it for separate reasons. The most effective manipulation may begin after the forgery, when institutions, markets, and grievances decide which version deserves survival. Marie was especially vulnerable because the false queen met expectations already prepared for her. Her foreign origin, public image, and association with court privilege created a character more accessible than the complicated woman herself. The fraud succeeded financially because Rohan wanted reconciliation. It succeeded historically because France already recognized the villain it seemed to reveal. Jeanne stole value from a necklace, while others extracted value from Marie's name. The first theft required forged letters. The second required only repetition. Once attached to Marie, the tale could be simplified with every retelling. Complexity weakened. Accusation survived. The missing necklace became more politically useful than the recovered truth for years afterward. The false words signed with Marie's name were shown to everyone. Her truest words were treated very differently. Years after forged letters helped condemn Marie, genuine letters revealed how carefully others had edited the woman behind the queen. In 1791, during a different political crisis, Marie exchanged correspondence with the Swedish Count Axel von Fersen. These letters belong to the revolutionary period, not the necklace fraud of 1784 through 1786. They cannot identify Jeanne's accomplices, explain Rohan's belief, or prove a political design behind the necklace affair. Their relevance is thematic and human. Portions of the surviving correspondence had been covered with dark ink. In 2021, researchers using X-ray fluorescence analysis recovered obscured writing in 8 of 15 examined letters. Their comparison of ink composition also indicated that Fersen was probably responsible for many redactions. The study did not prove that he and Marie were lovers, and his reasons for concealing passages remain uncertain. False words bearing Marie's name became public history. Genuine words were hidden and altered by another person's hand. The necklace case closes firmly at its center. Marie did not buy or receive the jewel. Jeanne and her accomplices created the direct fraud using forged messages, a staged meeting, and Rohan's longing for favor. The diamonds were taken for material gain. The outer questions remain open. Jeanne may have understood the political danger attached to Marie's identity, but the full extent of that intention is not established. Rival interests clearly benefited from the scandal and helped amplify it. Surviving evidence does not demonstrate that they jointly directed the original scheme. The larger answer lies between those circles. France believed the counterfeit Marie because she served political needs better than the real woman. The invented queen was extravagant, secretive, foreign, and easy to condemn. The living queen could be contradictory, mistaken, privileged, vulnerable, and innocent of this particular crime. A false signature became truth because Rohan needed reconciliation. Authentic words were blackened until science recovered only part of them. Who framed Marie Antoinette? The swindler who forged her name, the court that made the fraud public, or a nation that needed the false queen more than it wanted the real woman? Tell us where you believe the fraud ended and the political weapon began. If careful investigations of royal lives matter to you, join Crown Secrets and Scandals for more stories where evidence, reputation, and power collide. Thank you for watching and for judging the record as carefully as the mystery deserves.